Today, we are talking about something that I think most of us have heard about, maybe not always followed through with, and that is the meal known as breakfast, and specifically why it is so important for us to start our day with that first meal, no matter what your morning routine looks like. As a registered dietitian, I help tons of people manage their health and improve their eating habits by incorporating sustainable and practical nutrition strategies. And one of the most foundational things that I often recommend is getting into a breakfast routine. That obviously is going to depend on who you are, what your budget is, what your work, professional, personal life is like. So it's going to look a little different for everyone. I'm going to dive in to why breakfast matters, and then I'll try to see if I can help you with making breakfast work, even when you have a busy schedule or a limited budget. First of all, I'm sure you've heard of this. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day for good reason. There has been a ton of research that shows that starting your day with a balanced meal. So, we're talking about a balanced meal, not the traditional American breakfast where you're just pouring cereal into a bowl, but technically that could also be a balanced meal. And we'll learn a little bit more about that as I discuss coming up shortly as to how to create a balance when you are making food for yourself. It can really set the tone for the hours ahead. The reason around this is because when we wake up, our body has been fasting in its fasting state since you've gone to sleep, for many hours before. So eating breakfast can help with literally, as the word entails, breaking that fast, and it can give a jump start for our metabolism to start getting in that habit of burning the calories and utilizing that energy that food provides for us. So I always use this analogy of thinking of it as fueling up your car before you're going on a road trip. So let's just talk about a little bit about the timing of that too, right? You're gassing up the tank of your car and heading out on the road, whether you're taking a trip cross country or just going to run an errand or going to your office, whatever it is, you're still going to make sure there's gas in the car. Can't get very far, obviously, if you didn't tank up first. And you don't necessarily want to drive on empty and then fill up your tank of gas and stick your car in the garage at the end of the night and then never go out again with a full tank sitting there, just kind of wasting away. So, we're going to talk a little bit too about something known as front loading calories. Another reason why I believe, and I think some research shows as well, that breakfast is important is it allows us to provide us with calories earlier in the day when we are more likely to utilize them. So you're getting started, moving into whatever your next task is, even on the weekends. Maybe you're doing some chores, you're heading out to church, maybe you're going to school during the week, maybe you're going to work, maybe you're running errands. If you help create that front loadedness for you, then your mind and your body will utilize that fuel and will help you with not only stabilizing your blood sugar, but also promoting some satisfaction and allowing you to be a little bit more focused in your day. That brings me to the cognitive function discussion around having that first meal. If you skip breakfast, so I want to clarify here too. I understand that not everybody gets up and just immediately wants to start eating within 30 minutes. And yes, there are some recommendations about that. But let's just say, at its very basic, have whatever you can in your stomach. Just get your metabolism started. When you're skipping breakfast, or if you just start your day and your first quote unquote meal is a cup of coffee and not much else, even though you might have some caffeine in there, there's definitely going to be some sluggishness, some brain fog, maybe even a lack of focus. I know that's the feedback that I get when I work with people who do not have a first meal of the day or wait until they're settled in at some point in the very late morning or even early afternoon. But studies do show that eating in the morning can improve concentration, memory, productivity, problem solving, all of these things, no matter what you're doing. Even if you're just managing your daily routine, just having something in your stomach. All right, next, I want to talk a little bit about the common barriers that I see. So I know for some of you listening, that breakfast might seem like an impossible task. So, again, I want to ease into this. Maybe you're not a morning person. And also, I want to acknowledge too that not everybody has a traditional work routine or school schedule. Sometimes, like me, it's very erratic. There's not a typical 9 to 5 about anything in my schedule, but I try to make sure that I maintain some consistent scheduling across the board. Like I try to wake up and go to sleep at the same time every day, regardless of what the insides of my day looks like, what the inside of my schedule looks like. So again, maybe you're not rushing to get out the door. Maybe you're not hungry when you wake up. I hear this all the time, but there are definitely ways to work around those challenges. So if you're not hungry in the morning, which is pretty common, and by the way, I'm not usually hungry in the morning. I also work out first before I do anything else. So I'll go to the gym or I'll do my exercise routine in my living room before I eat. And that's also something that is not usually recommended. People will usually say, make sure you have something in your stomach or eat X amount of calories or grams of carbohydrates or whatever. I do what works best for my body. I don't like feeling like I have stuff sloshing around in my stomach when I'm moving around. So I make sure that I'm fasted when I work out. So if you're not hungry, again, first thing you could do, maybe something small, maybe a piece of fruit and a handful of nuts, or if you're creating for yourself a breakfast to come home to, especially if it's something simple like a smoothie. And when I say smoothie, I'm talking about a balanced smoothie. So I'm going off a little bit on the tangent here with giving you a recipe, but as an example, a smoothie that I would make for myself for when I come home to eat after I'm done working out would be water and or almond milk and a handful of raw spinach and a quarter to a half of an avocado and either a handful of almonds or a couple of tablespoons of peanut butter, and because on its own right there, it's going to be a little too savory for me. So I make sure I put something sweet in it, which is usually a half of a banana or maybe a half a cup of sliced strawberries or sliced blueberries. And I think that's it. So the point about that is it's not just fruit in a smoothie, it's the protein, the carbohydrates, the fats that will develop into a more balanced meal for myself. So maybe I'll take a small sip of that, or maybe you want to use that as something to get yourself started and then you drink the rest of that smoothie later on in the day. Over time, odds are your body will start adjusting more to this routine. Oh, and what did I want to say too? The traditional times of waking up. If you are a night shift worker, so your breakfast could be when you're waking up at 7 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock at night. You can kind of pick up what I'm talking about and just stick it into whatever you would consider to be the first meal of your day when you're getting up to go to whatever you're doing. The other thing too that comes up a lot is not having time, right? Mornings can be hectic. I'm in the middle of a million things. I don't know about you, but I do not just smash that alarm clock and then just bounce out the door. I need to ease into my day. So my mornings are not very hectic. I make sure that I accommodate and I get up earlier, but that might not be realistic for you. You might also be juggling many different responsibilities and also be in charge of other people's tasks and lives if you're overseeing your children or you are a caregiver for an adult or a parent. So totally get it. But this is why preparing ahead could be beneficial. So think about night before. What can you do a night or two before? Or if you are rotating certain things, we'll talk a little bit more about some ideas as far as recipes and actual meals. But if you're rotating some things, there might be some things on hand that are not perishable. So you can keep them in the fridge or in your pantry, and those can be grab and go type of things that you could either heat and eat to start, or maybe take them from the freezer and put them into the refrigerator to get ready for the next day. So I'm thinking things like, overnight oats, maybe even like a breakfast burrito, like a wrap that you can take with you and just heat up. So things like that, right? Get your ideas focused on what can be done the night before. So for me, and I think I've talked about this before in my social media Instagram lives. I do this with my clothes as well. Like I'll set up my clothes for meetings and my pajamas for my sleep and my workout clothes. And I have a little over the door hanger that has, 5 different hooks on it. And I'll put all of the clothes for the week and I don't even think about it. I do it on Sunday and it's done for the whole week. So that's something you can think out too, either the very night before or maybe a night that you're preparing for many days to come. And that could be helpful with allowing you not to have to squeeze anything into that very tight morning hectic schedule. The next thing is, I don't know what to eat. Okay, listen, I mean, this is like the future, right? We have access to the internet. Please, there are plenty of ways that you can be creative and have people help you do this. There's Pinterest, Google stuff, recipe generators, YouTube channels, even me on my social media platforms. I have tons of recipes and ideas, and on my blogs, I have links to things. So breakfast does not have to be the same thing every day if you get stuck in those ruts. As I said before, cereal and toast seem to be the American go-to, but I like to say, think outside the cereal box and take a look at different options that you can create. Also, acknowledging too that not every culture does eat as an American culture does. So leftovers from the night before can be things like fish or soup. Food is food. This is something I try to encourage people to. Now, I get it. Not everybody loves that. Some people like to start with a little bit of sweeter or lighter meal in the beginning of the day. But the point is that we can get creative with the foods that we can make into a first meal. So let's jump into, we figured the why breakfast is important and maybe some of the barriers that we're covering as well. We'll get into the how. So, what does a good, solid breakfast look like? I'm a firm believer, as I just said, not a one size fits all approach, has to totally fit into who you are, your budget, your time constraints, how many people are in your family, who you're cooking for, what your work schedule is like, all of those things. Let's try to see how you can make breakfast work for you. Okay, number one, balance is key. Every time I say balance, I'm talking about the mix of the combination of the three macronutrients. So if you're not sure what macronutrients are, I also have a ton of videos on YouTube as well, the Dish with Dina channel on YouTube, to tell you exactly what you need to know when it comes to macronutrients. Macronutrients are proteins and fats and carbohydrates. So when you have some representation there, the balance there helps keep you full, keeps you energized because all of those things come with calories, right? Gas in the car. They also help with stabilizing blood sugar when you have a balance. So an example could be, as I said before, you could have fruit, maybe an apple or a banana, and you're grabbing something like that out the door instead of just the apple or the banana. Pair it up with, because an apple or banana in itself, there might be some fiber, but that's technically a carbohydrate food. Pairing it up with a protein source, so this could be like a Greek yogurt or whatever kind of yogurt you like, but not a skim milk version or a non-fat version, because yes, there'll be some protein in there, but then all of the fat will be taken away. And the whole point is to balance it, to put those healthy fats in there. It's totally fine. Okay, milk, yes, okay, saturated fat. For those of you who are dealing with things like cholesterol, there is research out there that shows dietary fats, which means fats are coming directly from food and not necessarily through the process of like deep frying things, or how we sometimes refer to highly processed foods that contain a different type of saturated fat. Dietary fats that come from our animals and our plant products are not going to affect your cholesterol levels as much. But I'm digressing, and I'm also going to take a moment to disclaim I am not your dietitian. Okay, so just take this information as inspiration only. If you really are dealing with managing some sort of chronic condition, please make sure you are checking in with your own healthcare provider. And I really hope that you have a dietitian to help you with all this too, because they can help you with modifying and managing your meal plans to make sure you're doing what's best for you. All right, next up, as an example, whole grain toast. Instead of just slapping on some butter and jam on there, maybe you smash half of an avocado on it, or eat it with a hard boiled egg or a fried egg. Or, like I said, you can do the smoothie too, that's packed with proteins and veggies. Number two, non traditional breakfast. I keep pointing out the whole American thing, and I just said as well, I want to acknowledge other cultures. And if you don't have a multicultural or a cultural background to pull from, you might want to experiment with something like that. So don't feel trapped into just these traditional breakfast foods like cereals and oatmeal, depending on what you feel comfortable with. It might be very different from somebody else's version of a typical United States breakfast. So a savory bowl of rice and beans, a can of lentil soup. That can be a great breakfast. Quinoa or brown rice, right? Think of things that are grain based. So instead of having oatmeal or cereal, maybe you do something a little bit more hearty as far as like a bowl is concerned with a different type of grain-based food like a quinoa or a brown rice, and then packing in some other things. Many countries, breakfast really isn't sweet at all. So just embrace what you enjoy and aim for that balance, as I was mentioning earlier. Number three, tying this into the previous discussion I just said about prepping ahead. So especially if you're pressed for time, listen, if you are so pressed for time, and I used to be this person where you just don't have time to do anything, something's got to give. Okay. You cannot, I'm going to encourage you, you cannot keep putting aside your own health all the time for everybody else or every other thing. So you definitely have to find ways to set boundaries. And I know that some people work many jobs, some people have a lot of responsibilities, but 20 to 30 minutes is all you need. If you cannot find 20 to 30 minutes in your day or in your week, I'm going to see if there are other ways that you can delegate that. So maybe you do have someone else in the household that can help you with preparing some grab and go breakfast items. Maybe if you have the budget, you can order in and have some pre-made meals for you that you can, again, heat and eat, whatever you need to do as far as making that happen for you, that you can take the stress off of yourself for having to do the shopping and the cooking. Or something simple, again, like overnight oats, boiling up some eggs, making a batch of veggie based muffins in a muffin tin, or little mini quiches that are egg based there too. Or even if you're doing vegetarian, vegan versions of things, or you can buy that are pre made. So think of things that you can do ahead of time, even if it's just slicing and dicing some things or getting things from the freezer to the fridge and getting that ready for your morning so you can kind of cut out some of that prep time for you. All right, final thoughts and some key takeaways that I'm hoping you get from this discussion today is that I really do want to encourage you to have something to eat. You don't have to call it breakfast if you don't want to. Call it the first meal, call it a mini lunch, whatever. Just make sure when you're looking at the time from when you wake up to the time that you need to be on. All right. So, as an example, if you're waking up at 7 a.m. and you're going into work at 9, that's 2 hours right there that you don't have anything to provide you with energy. But once that 9 o'clock starts and you're in work, you're in meetings, you're working on databases, projects, assignments, etc., you really need to have something in your body to make sure that you're creating, again, that metabolism working, that focus going, the energy boosting, all of those things. So while it takes some time to plan, maybe experiment, find what works best for you. There might be times where you have vacation, seasonal changes, holidays, or like me, with the erratic schedule that some days you're going to have to do a lot of really quick heat and eat things, grab and go things, and other days you might have a little bit more of a luxury of time where you can make a heartier breakfast. Take a look and see what works best for you. Start small if you're not used to eating something immediately in the morning. And again, immediately, however you define that, whether it's in the first 30 minutes, the first 2 hours, but before you get launching into your day. Also, if you are able to listen to your body's cues, your hunger and fullness, that's something that I tend to encourage people to pay attention to. However, I want to just clarify a couple things around that because sometimes people will say, I eat when I'm hungry and I stop when I'm full. Sometimes we get in the zone and those cues go right out the window. It's very hard to recognize, oh, I should have eaten 2 hours ago and now I'm starving. So let that just be a mindful approach that you take. Maybe you might need to set up a timer every couple of hours. When that alarm goes off, you acknowledge, okay, I haven't eaten in a while. I think I should get up and get something to eat. And it's been a while since breakfast, so let me go forward. The other thing too about body hunger cues too is as we age, sometimes we lose the ability to recognize that. And the last thing too that I'll always acknowledge in any of these discussions is access, your ability to get to be able to afford or purchase or obtain nutritious, nutritionally dense foods. So again, no judgment as to what your choices might be. If you are able to, please make sure that you do what's right for you. If you are unable to, feel free to reach out. I'm here to help you with whatever your situation might be, whether it's economic constraints, time constraints, or medical constraints. And I will see you again or hear you again in the next episode.